Hello everyone! Welcome to the previously skipped TeruShouEnnoTana story. It's the one I wanted to write last winter, but then some of you didn't like the Daisho focused stories, so we switched for a while and now we are back. So, Winter Womb! As always, special thanks to my lovely patrons and all of you who subscribe and watch these videos. You're keeping this channel alive and going. Thank you very much, and I hope you will enjoy. As the days got colder and shorter with the approaching winter, so did Daishou's anxiety rise whenever he had an evening practice. The cold was unpleasant enough, but the darkness early on in the day was straight up scary. Anything could happen in the dark, and since his way led through pretty quiet neighborhoods, no one would know a thing. No one would help. The issue was, there wasn't much he could do about it. The closest bus stop wasn't close at all, the train one was even further, and bothering his boyfriends 3 days a week to accompany him home was out of the question. He thought he could make it work, that it was just a question of time before he would get used to it. But as he shut the door behind him with more force than necessary, his heart pounding and breath short again, he realized he was just lying to himself. To his surprise, the house wasn't empty this time around, and soon Terushima appeared from behind the corner. Everything alright? Worry seeped into his voice the same way it did into his face, and Daisho barely managed to stay upright. Yeah, it's dark already. It was a stupid explanation, but he knew Terushima would understand what he meant, and that he wouldn't ridicule him for it. He let himself get pulled into a hug, his fingers subconsciously curling in the fabric of Terushima's sweatshirts when Terushima patted his hair. It's alright, you're safe here. I know. I'm sorry, I know I shouldn't be like this. Hey, what did we say? Never apologize for being scared. He pulled away a bit to cap Daisho's cheeks, his eyes firm but sincere. You have a damn good reason to be careful, so no apologizing for that, okay? Daisho nodded and sank into the hug again, feeling the previous anxiety slowly melting out of his body, chased away by the gentle touches and warmth. He wished there was some other way, one that wouldn't inconvenience his partners all the time. But alas, his mind and memories held him in a firm grasp, especially in the dark. I thought you were still at work. Oh, yeah, my last client cancelled, so I thought I could start on dinner. But, maybe if you aren't too tired, you could help me. You know how it ends when I cook. He chuckled sheepishly, and Daisho couldn't help but smile. Gladly. Just give me a moment to change. Even if it was just an attempt to get his mind off of the fear, he couldn't possibly say no to that request. Soon, they were in full swing to prepare dinner for all of them in time when Enoshita and Tanaka would get home. The light atmosphere, chatter, and somewhat mundane work helping ease the remains of fear settled deep in Daisho's bones. His mind started to wander a bit as they finished, but it didn't take long before Tanaka's voice filled their home, soon followed by Enoshita's soft but stern one. Sitting all together by the table and sharing stories from their respective day felt overwhelming in the best way possible. It had been a while since they enjoyed dinner like this, without anyone particularly stressed or upset by something. It was nice. Maybe you should ask someone from the team to give you a ride when you have evening practice. Daisho raised his head, hesitating for a moment before he sighed. I don't want to bother them. Suguru, someone will definitely have a way around. They're your friends. If you tell them what's going on, I'm sure they'll help. There was a badly hidden plea in Enoshita's voice, strong enough to cut off any further protest Daishou might have. Right, he wasn't the only one concerned about the potential creep on his heels. They proved it numerous times they were worried about him when he was somewhere alone, even at home. And so he found himself nodding, once again moved by the amount of care he received. Alright, I'll ask around. To his surprise, once he explained the situation, he did agree with one of their middle blockers, who happened to drive close to their home to his apartment, to take him on board quite easily. He was even offered lifts after morning and afternoon practices, but he kindly refused those. It was just the darkness that scared him. He could manage throughout the day. It worked really well for the next 3 weeks or so, but unfortunately for him, his teammate was sick and no one else had a ride close that evening, leaving him to walk once again. He shivered despite the 3 layers of clothes, the harsh cold biting into every inch of his skin that stayed exposed. He couldn't recall such low temperatures coming around for the last 10 years at least, and of course they had to come when he couldn't hide in the warm car. Don't complain, it could be worse. True, but it could definitely be better. He huddled deeper into his coat and the thick scarf wrapped around his neck, fishing his phone out of his pocket to call Tanaka about his presumed delay. His finger hovered over the call icon for a second or two before he finally dialed the number. It wasn't like he didn't want to call, but Tanaka didn't need more worries added on him these days. However, he was the only one who could pick up right now, as Enoshita was still at work and Terushima left yesterday to visit his parents. It didn't take long for Tanaka to pick up. Hey, everything alright? Why is that your first question? Because you don't call unless you have to. Did something happen? No, just... I might come a bit later today because Kato couldn't take me. So just don't worry if I'm not home yet when we get there. Why couldn't he take you? Daisho stilled despite knowing the tone wasn't meant for him. He's sick. It's alright, I can make it home just fine. It's just going to take a bit because the buses aren't running because of the ice on the roads. I don't have to say I don't like it, right? Ryu. Well, sorry, but I don't. This whole arrangement is happening for a reason. How about I meet you halfway? You don't have to, really. I can make it on my own. I don't doubt that. I just don't trust whatever might be waiting along the way. I'll meet you at the crossroads by train station, okay? Daisho gave up, shivering when an icy gust of wind pierced through his coat. Okay. I'm sorry. Don't be. Be careful on the way, okay? Of course. He ended the call, and despite the guilt, his heart fluttered, warned by the knowledge into what lengths would his loved ones go to keep him safe. He carefully laid his feet on the snow-covered pavement, avoiding the icy spots and listening to the sounds around him for a potential warning. But all he could hear was the snow crunching under his shoes and the gentle rustling of snowflakes falling on the ground. If it was under any other circumstance, he would even call it magical. Maybe we could go out together once the Christmas lights appear. That would be nice. He made a mental note to mention it after Terushima returned and picked up the pace a bit. The last thing he wanted was to make Tanaka wait in the freezing cold. That, and also because he just walked through the part he hated the most, filled with mostly empty houses, only a few lights and several dark alleys to the both sides. His nerves immediately strained like a pulled bowstring, his heart speeding up along with his steps. It's fine. Just keep going. You walked around here tens of times. It's fine. A thought to call Tanaka again crossed his mind. Maybe if they were talking, it would deter any potential danger. The safety course he went through 2 years ago even advised that. And hearing Tanaka's voice would surely help too. However, before he could reach into his pants pocket to get his phone again, dread rushed through his body, his instincts screaming at him to run and fast. Not even a split second later, something grabbed the back of his coat and flung him into one of the side alleys. A yelp of shock and pain escaped his mouth when he hit the ground, the gravel digging into his palms as he tried to back away from the stranger. He could barely see the man's features hidden by darkness and a bush of beard, the stench coming from his clothes, or perhaps his person too, leaving a sour aftertaste in the back of his mouth. But all that was irrelevant. He just had to get away before he could find out why this was happening. He scrambled to his feet, but before he made a single step, the man was behind him. The deep growl he let out sending chills down Daishou's spine. He gasped for air as the scarf tightened harshly around his throat, the rush of horror and memories chasing tears into his eyes. A strangled sob escaped his mouth when the scarf finally gave up, only to get replaced by a large hand squeezing his throat.
Coat off!
First tears rolling down his cheeks, Daishou stood frozen in place, unable to move a finger despite the hand restricting his breathing more and more every second. Pain exploded in the back of his head when it collided with a wall, and then he was flung back on the ground, more pain throbbing through his face. A harsh tug on his coat pulled his arms back, tearing some of the buttons away before it let go like his scarf and slid from his shoulders, leaving him exposed to the biting cold in just a sweater.
Please don't.
He curled into a ball, shivering and praying the sweater, or worse, his jeans, wouldn't be next. Though praying had always been futile. He knew how this went, how it ended. It never stopped, no matter how much he begged. But no more touches happened. Only the echo of heavy footsteps rushing away from him reached his ears. He risked a glance over his shoulder, but the alley was empty, the silence only interrupted by his ragged breaths and the soft rustling of snowflakes falling on the ground. Yet his body still wouldn't move despite the freezing temperature mercilessly biting into his skin, tense and expecting the man to return any second to finish what he started. But even after long minutes had passed, the sound of footsteps didn't return. Finally collecting himself a bit, he wiped the freezing tears from his cheeks, his hands trembling like crazy as he reached into his jeans pocket to find his phone. Never was he so grateful for his habit to not put his phone into his coat or jacket. The screen was cracked from where he fell on it, but at least he had a means of contact now. It took a while to make the screen listen, but eventually he managed to dial the last number he called. His vision hazed again when, after several beeps, he heard the familiar deep voice speak to him.
Suguru,
I'm on the way, just a few streets and...
Can you come to me, please?
Tanaka hurriedly paused, his voice turning worried. What's wrong? Where are you?
About 3 minutes from the place down the street.
Okay, I'll be there soon, I promise. Are you safe? Was he? He had no idea. The stranger snatched him out of nowhere, and while he didn't seem to be interested in more than his coat and scarf.
I don't know.
Okay, stay on the phone, I'm coming too. Judging by the sounds coming in through the phone, Tanaka broke into a run on the icy pavement.
Be careful.
I am, no worries. Just tell me if something happens, okay? Scream if needed. I'll be there in a bit, I promise. Daisho trusted him. He carefully gathered himself to his feet and stumbled out of the alley, his legs numb and barely holding him upright. Tanaka said to stay, but there was no way he would stay there. Perhaps it was a bad idea since he didn't know where the man went, but he had to move. The streets seemed silent except for his muffled footsteps, prompting him to move faster, away from the dark alley. His head hurt like all hell, the occasional fits of ringing in his ears and blurred vision making it difficult to keep the direction. Still, he pressed on, shivering and holding onto the wall for support, but moving forward. He could hear Tanaka's voice coming from the phone sometimes and used it as a drive to keep walking despite being unable to discern the words at all. They had to find each other eventually. He just had to keep moving and... Suguru! Dazed, he looked up, relief flooding his body when he recognized his boyfriend in the dark blob rushing towards him through the street. He raised his hand in a weak greeting, and then he was only falling. The first thing he noticed was a gentle yellow light. The next were soft voices somewhere around him and warmth. He was no longer freezing, but cozy warm instead, though it took him a while before he realized it came from the fluffy blanket wrapped around him. Slowly pushing himself to sit up, he turned his head to find the source of the voices, pain pounding in his temples with the movement. To his surprise, he found himself on a couch in a familiar room, with the voices coming from the kitchen.
You?
His voice came out barely louder than a whisper, but despite that, Tanaka appeared in the living room in a split second and immediately made his way to him, followed closely by Enoshita. Oh, thank goodness. How do you feel? I was so scared. You just collapsed in my arms back then and... Shush, let him breathe. Tanaka clapped his mouth shut, but still sat next to Daisho on the couch and cradled his face in his palms, visibly shaken. What hurts?
My head.
He took a shuddered breath, pulling the blanket closer when a shiver, perhaps a remnant of the outside chill, shook with his body. The warm hands gently squeezed his cheeks, returning his attention back to their home. You're safe now, I promise.
Yeah, we won't let anyone close to you.
Anyone? Panic gripped his mind, speeding up his heart and breaths alike. He could still feel it, the hand on his throat, the freezing temperature when the stranger ripped the coat off of him, the horror taking hold of him when his breathing got restricted. Everything, just like before. Shh. It's okay, you're safe. No one will hurt you, I swear. As the first tears entered his eyes, he was put into the safety of Tanaka's arms. He gripped the fabric of his hoodie, his body going limp, refusing to listen to him. Fortunately, Tanaka didn't seem to mind, holding him until his heartbeat somewhat settled. Another pair of warm hands captured his, carefully leading him to release his grip.
It's alright. You're home now. I'm sorry.
There's nothing to be sorry for. Just take a deep breath, okay? Everything is fine. For a moment, he could almost believe it. It took several minutes before he was able to let go and sit up again, feeling drained and drowsy, the headache probably even worse than before. Neither Tanaka nor Enoshita left his side the whole time, keeping him warm and secure while whispering quiet reassurances into his ears. He was grateful for it, eternally so. If only he wasn't adding so much work on them all the time.
I'm sorry.
Suguru, I told you there's no need. He brushed the hair out of Daishou's eyes, visibly concerned. What happened?
He stole my coat and scarf.
He?
I don't know. I thought
Shh, it's okay. Take your time.
He grabbed my throat. I was scared he would, but he left. That's when I called you. I tried to get closer, but I can't remember the rest.
Okay, yeah, no wonder. I almost didn't get you in time back there. He pulled Daishou under his chin, gently stroking his back. Thank goodness he was just after your coat. Might have been some crazy homeless guy. Daishou didn't say anything to that. It was possible, of course, but somehow he found it difficult to believe. And if he could judge by the increase of tension in Tanaka's body, he didn't fully believe it either. However, before he could think too hard about it, Enoshita squeezed his shoulder and put a mug of hot chocolate into his hands.
Here, warm up a bit more, okay? And then lay down. You might have a light concussion.
Daishou nodded weakly, both in thanks and as an acknowledgement, the pain shooting through his skull with the motion stealing his hearing for a moment. He took a few sips of the chocolate and then let Tanaka guide his head on his lap, feeling too weak to panic about the unfamiliar position for them. Besides, this was Tanaka touching him. He had nothing to be scared of. The ever so gentle fingers started to massage his temple, slowly relieving the pain and helping him forget the fright still settled deep in his bones. Soon, his eyelids became too heavy to keep his eyes open, but a gentle shake prevented him from drifting off.
Let me sleep, please.
I'm sorry, love, I can't. Not yet. Just hold on for a bit longer, okay? We'll make sure your head is okay, and then I'll carry you over to bed, Daishou wanted to protest against the caring part, but the words refused to leave his mouth. And so he just curled on Tanaka's lap, trying to find something to focus on to battle the creeping exhaustion lulling him to sleep. Then, before he realized how much time had passed, he felt Tanaka carefully pick him up into his arms and carry him away, and soon he found himself huddled into the blankets on their bed. A light kiss landed on his temple, making him shiver. Have a good rest. I'll come check on you later, okay? You're safe here, I promise. And Daisho trusted him in that. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I'm very glad I finally got around to write this story that I planned over a year ago. But hey, things happened. Anyway, I had to shift a story a bit, but it still fits quite well. And if you've seen my last community post, you probably guessed we are getting into the part of the story I'm very much looking forward to. And as I said, I'm super proud of the monster I've created for this storyline, and I can't wait for you to actually meet him. Soon. Look forward to it. As always, if you have any requests or ideas, the request form is linked in the video description. See you next time.